Hello and welcome again to Beneath the Surface. This is episode 2 of a new series that we're doing on refuting the nonsense and reclaiming the truth, one Socratic dialogue at a time, which happens to be my newly published book, my latest book. And you can find it on Amazon and other places. But first, let me introduce to you our guest for tonight to discuss chapter 2 in this book, Mr. Kent Niebuhr, adult catechist extraordinaire. How are you?
I'm all right, Paul. It's been a long time. It's good to get together again.
It has. Gosh, when's the last Beneath the Surface you've been on?
Man, oh man, it's
Yeah.
gotta be a year or more.
A whole lot has been happening in your life. A whole lot has been happening. Has been happening in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really great to be back, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And you've been busy. You've been writing books.
Yeah, I got a couple done, and I'm working on my third, which is a more scholarly book. It's coming out
really?
probably in a few months. Looking forward to that.
So now your first two books have been in dialogue format. So
Yes.
in the great philosophical tradition
Of Socrates,
of Socrates. So the Socratic method is not just dialogue, but it's Q&A, questions and answers.
Right.
Trying to find the truth through the dialectic method, meaning just the more you talk about it, the more you discuss it. Socrates believed you'd eventually get to the truth. And
that's because Socrates never believed that arguing with somebody was meant to be won. It was meant to assist each other to the truth. The truth has to be the winner.
Right. It's the way of advancing. It's the way of advancing closer to the truth. So in other words, I have this saying, it's like, I don't care who's right. I just care what's right.
Yeah,
right? I'm not trying to be the one who's right, and I'm not trying to, vanquish you in a conversation. I just want to find out the truth. So hopefully, if we really go at it, if we really dig in and test every truth claim, test every theory, hopefully we're going to be able to find the flaws where they lie. We're going to be able to refute things, and eventually we'll whittle things down to, well, if all of these other things are wrong, right? The via negativa almost, right? Is if we can figure out what it's not, then maybe what we're left with is the truth, right?
And this presumes that human beings have the gift of reason.
That the truth is knowable, right?
Yeah. It's knowable through reason. So there are two ways to know the truth, two basic ways, actually three. One is faith. Somebody tells you and you believe them. One is reason, through logic and understanding of something. And the other, you could say, is science or empirical methods. You see it, hence you believe it.
Mm-hmm. It walks like a duck. It talks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It must be a duck, right?
Everything we know, the entire body of knowledge that we know, is a combination of these three things. Now, whenever I challenged my college classes of this, when I used to ask them, which of the three do you think you came to know what you know today the most? And they say, oh, science or maybe reason. And actually, it's faith. It really is. We begin life believing our parents and our teachers, and then our doctors, and then our the so-called experts, and the things we read in books, on maps, on all of these. I've never been to Australia, yet I personally am certain it exists. Why?
Right.
I didn't get it through the empirical knowledge. I can't reason out there must be in Australia. I can't do that through logic. So that's just a quick example of how we know things through faith, and we whittle it down through reason. We reject many things that we have been brought up with because we have the gift of reason, and of course the scientific method is always a good complement to all of that.
It actually is sort of an amalgam of all of that, I would say, because if you don't, first of all, let's say you say, well, basically a lot of people, I think, erroneously assume the scientific method is purely experiential, right? It's nothing but experience. We're going to do something and observe what happens, which observatory or observational or experiential, it's kind of the same thing.
Yep.
Right. But what you're really doing is you're having faith. I remember, as you remember, and as maybe some of your listeners may remember from way back when, is I used to be an atheist. And what I didn't realize is that, to the extent that I believed in science, I was never a scientist or anything like that. But what I would think is I had faith in the scientific method, right? Not realizing, that most of the scientific method, or fundamentally, it relies on probabilities. Hey, we did the same exact thing with the same exact circumstances 99 times. So, and it all came out one way. So we're going to assume that if we did it 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, it would still keep coming out the same way. And, that seemed reasonable, but what it's not is certain.
Yeah.
We don't know if we did it one more time, something different would have
Yeah,
happened.
the term settled science is kind of an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
such thing. There's no such thing.
Yeah. But to underscore your point, I do think that the scientific method is reasonable and must be reasonable, but also we have to believe it. We have to believe
Yeah.
our senses in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And as Rene Descartes illustrated to us back in the 16th century, we also have to believe our reasoning power,
Right.
our senses and our reasoning power. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all sort of underscored by faith or belief. But
Yeah.
anyway,
And
yeah,
there's another layer to this, because Descartes wanted to, his hyperbolic doubt. He wanted to say, I'm not going to believe anything until I can prove it.
yeah,
Well, as you're saying, basically, prove it with what?
yeah,
What are you proving it with? You're proving it with your ability to reason or observe things, right?
yeah,
But now we're getting to a point where people want to even say that nothing is knowable. They take Descartes.
right,
Descartes at least said, "Well, I believe things are knowable, but I'm not going to take anything as a given. I'm not going to believe anything unless it's proven to me or I can prove it." Now we're getting to the point where people are saying there is no truth. There is
yeah,
no meaning. And even if there was, we couldn't know it, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the problem with that, Paul. Nobody who says that,
yeah,
or who doesn't say it for that matter, actually lives that way, right? Every
yeah,
time you flick a light switch, you expect the light to go on.
yeah,
That
that's
that
right.
means you know something, right? Every time you turn the key to your car, you expect the engine to start. You press the gas pedal, you're going to go. You're going to stop when you press the brake, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
You believe all of these things. Why?
yeah,
Because experience. You don't go out to your car
that's
every
right.
morning and test every connection,
That's right.
take out every part and bench test it, and then
You
put it
wouldn't,
back in.
you wouldn't be able to live.
No, you couldn't live like
I have
that.
a heavy light fixture that's right above me.
Mm-hmm.
I have faith. I believe that that's not going to just come crashing down. There's
Right.
that I'm not an engineer. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
it through really my own knowledge, but
Mm-hmm.
I have faith that it won't.
Mm-hmm. And I'll
It's
tell you what, having just bought a house recently and having talked to other homeowners, time and time again,
mm,
things happen where you realize, oh my goodness, we thought that light
mm,
was secure in the ceiling and it fell down on the dinner table, you know?
yeah,
But you were living your life with the confidence that this light is safe and secure, and we can sit
that's
at the
right.
dinner table and not have to worry about it.
Yeah,
So
nobody starts out life saying, I'm not going to believe anything until it's proven.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
nobody does because
You
you
just
can't.
believe. And by the way,
Yeah,
what we're having today, in my opinion, is
yeah,
sort of this. You do. Let's say there's this saying out there that you learn
mm,
more before the age of 5 than you will in the rest of your life. Now, I don't know if that's literally true, but I'm sure there's something to that, because you're learning to walk, talk, you're learning every contact with the outside world for the first time in those first 5 years. So whatever's happening then, but I think what we've evolved into in our culture, or devolved into in our culture, is this extended adolescence where you have conversations with someone and you start to realize very quickly, this person really hasn't thought about this. This person's arguing with me,
Yeah.
really hasn't thought about it at all. They're just throwing various catchphrases or claims, and what you realize is I'm not actually communicating with this person. This person is an intermediary
Yeah.
between me and whoever they heard that from.
All right. This is
They
this is
haven't thought about this themselves.
this is a fantastic bridge. Thank you for that. Um, we are for the rest of the show, we're going to focus on chapter 2, which is ethical theories. But the first dialogue in chapter 2 is something called progressively progressing into the abyss. And why don't we read this live? Do you happen to have it in front of you?
I have it in front of me.
All
I
right.
sure do.
So this is the first dialogue of chapter
On my
2,
teleprompter.
and it kind of relates to what you were just talking about. So I'm going to read it from my book. See that?
All
Yeah,
right, look
it
at that. Love
matches.
that. Yeah.
Let's see. Hopefully I don't need glasses for this. And
I
all
do.
right. Are you ready? So you're going to be Richie and I'll be Sophia, which
All
means
right.
which means wisdom.
Okay. You're going to make me be the progressive, huh?
Yes. All
All
right.
right.
Ready? Go.
I'm a progressive.
Good for you. What does that mean?
I believe in progress and advancement.
To where?
What do you mean to where?
Isn't the direction or the destination of this progress and advancement important? Or do you just love movement?
I'm advancing forward.
Forward toward what? We can progress forward to driving off a cliff, and advancement and tooth decay isn't all that good, is it?
Good thing? There is no good or evil, no right or wrong direction, only progress.
Are you serious?
Absolutely. As we progress, we don't judge, we accept all, we don't offend, and we tolerate anyone.
Even those who believe you're progressing in the wrong direction?
No, we don't tolerate them. They're radical, judgmental types who want to take us back to the Stone Age. They're out of step with the times.
So conforming to the times is better than conforming to what is objectively true and good? And morality is judged by a calendar rather than by reason or a sound judgment?
There is no objective moral direction, I'm telling you. We create and redefine our moral code as we progress. Then we coerce dissenters to follow. Whatever suits the powerful at any given time is the right direction. We are enlightened.
It's blind arrogance like that that explains our culture of death. You can't see that we're now progressing down a road of destruction for individuals, the family, and society? Progress in the wrong direction can be fatal. We need to change direction.
You're a backward Neanderthal. Get with the program or you'll be left behind.
The end. All right. So what does that tell us? Basically, you represent today's secular humanists or progressives or cultural leftists or whatever you want to call them. That sort of holds a certain way of viewing life that doesn't seem to follow reason, does it?
Well, what it follows, there's this assumption, and I forget there's a word for it, something like novelism or something like that, which basically means if it's new,
yeah,
it's better. It's
good,
better.
Yeah.
Right. And conversally, the older something is, the more inferior it is.
Well, actually, we sort of touched on that here. I said you want to follow a calendar rather than a good argument. So basically, it's whatever is newer is better.
Right. Yeah. Now, and that first of all, there's a mistake in that, right? Yeah. I mean, we could obviously, if we as individuals can make bad decisions, if we make a mistake, then we could say, well, the latest thing I did, the most recent thing I did turned out to be a mistake. Well, then that automatically refutes the concept that we're always progressing, we're always getting better as time goes on, it's all positive, right? So we can't, that kind of novelism, or I forget the term, I don't think I've got it, that newer things are better and older things are worse, just because of the calendar, as it said in the dialogue, it just falls apart when you just gently push back on it.
Then if half the country is given the gift of reason but refuses to use it,
Mm-hmm.
there must be a reason for this. What do you think the bottom line reason is?
For believing that things are getting better as we go.
Yeah, and that it doesn't matter where you're progressing to as long as you're progressing.
Yeah. Well, there's a fundamental problem with that, which you can't even get off the start line with that, which is this: the term progress implies improvement. It's almost a synonym for improvement, right? To progress means to improve, right? Now, there's another.
That's what it usually means in people's minds. But
Exactly.
like we said,
Progress.
with cancer or with
Mhm.
tooth decay, progress is not such a
Mhm.
good thing.
Right. It just means it's advancing. It means it's
Yeah,
going. It's
it's
developing.
progressing. The disease
Right.
is progressing.
Exactly. As opposed to, say, disintegrating or something like that, deteriorating. Right. But the problem is, it's funny, and I have little kids, and one of the things I always say to my little kids when we're out in public somewhere, like we're going to, let's say it's a mall, right, and they start running off in whatever direction, and I stop them and I say, you know what it takes to be a good leader? You have to know where we're going, and you just started taking us in the wrong direction, right? So now with progressivism, the very fundamental concept is that there is something, a goal, right? We're moving towards a goal. In other words, we're getting better, right? We're getting closer to that goal, which, if it's a goal, it's a good, right? In it, whatever your concept of good is, the goal must be something worth struggling for, striving for,
Okay,
sacrificing for.
but it's never really clarified with them.
No,
And
it's
and
not.
and if you notice the other than Biden, the last two Democratic presidential candidates when they were running ran on one word. Remember what it was?
Change.
Both Clinton and Obama. Change.
Change. And you
Change.
know what? I was thinking about that when I read your dialogue.
Change to
And
what?
I remember, even way back in the day, and I can't remember if it was the Clinton campaign or the Obama campaign. Taco Bell picked up on it, and they were like, "Change is good," and because they were going to give you these great deals on
Now,
food, and you would actually
change
get some change back, right?
change
But
like progress is a neutral term in and
you
of
could
itself,
change for the better, you could
or the
change for the
worse.
worse,
And as we
right?
know with
Change
those
is
two
happening.
guys, it was for the worse.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And so the idea, when someone says, "Hey, we need to change things," one of the things I think of is G.K. Chesterton had this analogy where he talked about you're going for a walk in the countryside, and you're walking through this gigantic open field. It's just a vast expanse, and at some point in your walk, you come across a fence, and you're looking around, and as far as the eye can see, for maybe a mile in every direction, you can't see a thing. And so you think to yourself, this is the dumbest thing that this fence is here. Why in the world would there be a fence in the middle of nowhere? And so you decide to tear up the fence. You tear it up, tear it out. You scatter the boards, and then the next thing you know, a herd of sheep comes over the hill and just runs wild and scatters in every direction. And you go, "Oh, that's what that fence was for," right? So what I went in there, and if I'm assuming, if it's true that change is good, I just went into that field and made a change, right?
yeah.
Well, now you could say, okay, well, I actually did something good because we set the sheep free. The captive sheep are now free to roam and get eaten by wolves, by the way.
Mm,
But then someone else would say, you did a terrible thing. These sheep were here to feed this village
yeah.
and clothe them in wool, etc., and sheep's milk and
Yeah.
cheeses and
So
whatever. And then you could say,
you're bringing up an excellent point in that what is the end?
yes,
What is
what
the
is
goal?
the telos?
What is the
What is the
telos?
goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those who believe in the natural law theory would say that there is human nature has certain telos that need to be fulfilled by certain goods in order for the human being to have integral human fulfillment. Um, Progressives have basically thrown out human nature and have replaced it with sort of an
Yes.
existentialist plasticism that each individual can create themselves from scratch. Never mind how
Mm-hmm.
God created us, male, female, we can create ourselves from scratch. And this is
Right.
absolutely bizarre, but half the country is beginning to believe this.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, this is what we see in like transgenderism and et
Totally.
cetera. It's like you could just be whatever you said, and I mean, if I said, well, I identify as Lord and Creator of the universe,
Yeah.
if you don't refer to me as Lord and Creator of the universe, then you're
Hmm.
somehow depriving me of some rights,
Yeah.
or it's just kind of absurd on the face of it. But what it does bring up is the question. I've had conversations with people where they deny that there is a human nature, right?
Yeah.
They
Totally.
deny that.
Yeah.
And they think explicitly they understand the concept and deny it, right?
Yeah. Right.
Intelligent people, I would say, or highly educated people, I would
It's
say.
it's it's
Um,
very, very popular way of thinking today.
it sure is. And you ask why. And or okay, so what is the T loss? I think in their minds, and I don't want to create a fake argument for them, a straw man argument, but I think in their minds is that the goal is that we all just get along,
Yeah. Well,
that there's
you're
no
you're a former
discord.
yeah, like you said a little earlier, you're a former
Mhm.
atheist. Is that what the underlying goal was for you
I
in those
think
days?
I think my atheism, that was definitely an element of it, but the primary driver for me, the priority was self advancement. It was like I just need to be the smartest one around. I need to just navigate life
Right.
successfully so that I thrive, right? Which brings us to a very good question, and this is one of the things in one of your subsequent dialogues that follows from here is human thriving, because just
Yeah.
not to go through the whole dialogue, but Richie starts argues that the purpose of life is pleasure, right?
Yes.
It's just to feel good, and that's all that's good,
Whatever
right?
is pleasing to
And
you. Yes.
right, whatever is pleasing to you. The fundamental concept is this: that pain, suffering, sacrifice is bad, and nothing good can come from it.
Yeah.
And they're not really two different things. They're two sides of the same coin. That um, pleasure is always good, and nothing bad can come from it. Right? They're
Yeah.
just two sides of the same coin. But what we realize is that, let's say, I'll take the example of being a parent. Let's say I really just want to sit here and watch YouTube videos and eat bonbons all day long, right? But
Okay.
I've got a baby here that has a dirty diaper. That baby's miserable, right? But I can get pleasure from watching YouTube videos and eating bonbons. And so my pleasure, I think, or, I'm taking this
Mm.
approach that I can maximize my pleasure if I just block out this baby, this miserable baby,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
But first of all, can I really do that? And I would say, can I really do that and maintain my
It
sanity?
it,
Number
dep- it
one.
depends on how dead into your conscience is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But assuming a sane person,
Yeah.
can I really block out that baby? And second of all, that baby's misery is not going to decrease
Mm.
by being neglected or ignored. So, what do I have to do to maximize my pleasure? Deprive myself, at least temporarily, of the pleasure of watching YouTube videos and eating bonbons, and go change this baby's diaper,
Yes.
right? I have to satisfy the baby. I have to give the baby pleasure if I want to achieve my pleasure or obtain my pleasure,
Yeah.
right? So, what have I done? In order to pursue pleasure, I've actually had to sacrifice pleasure, at least temporarily, right? So human thriving cannot be simply and monomaniacally based
Mm.
on just my pleasure.
No,
right?
and I think what you're touching on here is a part of what we were talking about earlier on human nature. Fatherhood demands has certain telos, has certain ends and purposes and
Mm-hmm.
reasons for being. And as a father, you have certain responsibilities without which you will never be fulfilled. But we're running out of
Exactly.
time, so I do want to go over just a sort of just touch on the top of on the, not beneath the surface, but on top of the surface of the three other um, ethical theories that are mentioned in this chapter, because
Yes.
I think that dialogue that we just read sort of includes both utilitarianism and moral relativism. And utilitarianism is simply it's pleasure based. Whatever gives the most pleasure to the most people is what you do. That makes right. With
Mm-hmm.
relativism, it's basically relative on anything else. It's circumstantial, it's situational. Natural law theory, which is the most reasonable and which the church has adopted for the most of her existence, um, is the one that looks at the act itself, not necessarily just the consequences or the intention of the person or the circumstances that surround it, but there are certain acts, say natural law theorists, there are certain acts that can never be good. They will always violate human nature, regardless of circumstances and intention. And they're called moral absolutes, or those things that are intrinsically evil. Want to touch upon that?
Yeah. Let me touch it if you don't mind. Let me touch upon it by pushing back on it or kind of being a devil's advocate.
Good.
Several years ago, got to be 20 years ago now, I believe it was in Pope Benedict the 16th's Regensburg address, if that rings any bells.
I know what you're about to
And
say.
yes, and he said, "How do we even know that reason is rational?" And the other thing I would say is we want to basically one way to explain natural law is whatever causes human thriving, right? That would be according to a my nature is if I'm fulfilling my nature or conforming to my nature, I will thrive, right?
Yes.
So, like the nature of a car, you have to put gasoline in the engine, not
Yes.
tomato juice, right?
That's
The
right.
nature of a car is that it needs gas, etc. I have to put certain things in me to thrive, and there are certain things I cannot put in me to thrive, and then I can't. My car is not made to drive like off road, right?
Yeah.
So I have to drive my car on streets. If I take my car off road, I've violated its nature. Same thing with me. Not only what I put into my body, but what I do with my body
Yes.
has to conform to my nature. And not only that, the same applies to my mind, right? My
Yes.
psyche, you could
Yes.
say. Now, but here's where I want to make a distinction, and I hope we can play this out by me being sort of a devil's advocate. Richie, in your dialogues, says it's about pleasure. Sophia says no, it's about human thriving. Paul Morano, Dr. Morano, what's the difference? If I'm just constantly experiencing pleasure, am I not thriving? Is that not
Well, not
is that
necessarily, because
what do you mean?
well, well, if you, I mean, I take a lot of pleasure in chocolate cake, but if I had 20 pieces of chocolate cake right now, I'd get sick to my stomach. It would
Yeah.
be very pleasurable all the way down for the next
So
10 minutes,
so
but
what about this though, Paul? What if
yeah,
we could, I don't know, come up with a pill that would enable us to just eat nothing but chocolate cake?
if we could come up with a pill that would enable us, I don't think that that would be possible because it would violate human nature to such a point that I don't know if we'd be human anymore.
Well, I think the point is this. If we have to take a pill to do it, then it's not natural. It's not human nature. We're
Unless,
inserting or injecting,
yeah,
you could say, something that is not part of our nature to
but
change the way our body
yeah,
works in the
right.
case of chocolate cake. So it's not human thriving, it's artificial thriving.
Yes, but we right here, we need to make an important distinction that unnatural when it comes to human behavior does not necessarily mean artificial, because we can use artificial things in order to bring human nature back to where it was meant to be. Say if we have a
Hmm.
broken leg, using crutches is not an unnatural act.
Right.
If we break it's if we need glasses, you're wearing glasses right now. That seems to be very artificial. It is.
Hmm. Yes.
However, it's bringing your sight back to where it potentially should be. So there
Ought
are
to.
certain artificial things we do to
Right.
bring us back to what human nature is meant to be. But what you're saying here, and this is the distinction, to bring us past a human nature, to bring us past what our telos is. To create a $6 million man so that he can win the Olympics. This is unjust and unnatural.
So then, what is human thriving? We're using the term natural law and human nature and human thriving, but what exactly is through human thriving? Is that longevity? Is that health? Is that what do you mean by human
Well, you
thrive?
could
Is it
you could
wealth?
say it's difficult to pinpoint, but um, Aristotle used the Greek word for happiness. Another word, that we're familiar with, it could be well-being. It's just,
Eudaimonia?
yeah, yeah, exactly. The optimal, well-being of the human person as he or she has been created and designed.
And I also would have to say this, if sticking with Aristotle, he also said man is a social animal. So it's
No
not
question.
just my thriving, it's
Yeah,
how does humanity
yeah.
thrive,
Well,
right?
there are five. Aquinas takes that and says there are five dimensions of human life that must be fulfilled in order for the person to be fulfilled: biological, familial, the family, social, um, intellectual, the mind, as well as religious. All five of these dimensions of the human person must be fulfilled in order for the human being to be happy and fulfilled. And we
Right.
don't, we're so out of line with that today. We have so many people have lost sight of what we are as a human person. And that is the bottom line to why natural law works so well and these other ethical theories don't. We only have
Mm-hmm.
about a minute left. Let me give you the last word and
I would
go
say
deeper.
that the next dialogue would have to be something about, and you touch on this in your written dialogues, but I'm sorry, I'm confusing dialogue between you and me dialoguing and the dialogues in your book, but utilitarianism, because
Okay.
we could then make the mistake of saying, well, whatever provides the most good for the most people, that's human thriving, right? But we all recognize that, well, there's a reason why, yes, we have a democracy, but we also don't want mob rule, right? We still want, that's why we talk about human rights, because even if 51% of the polis, the country wants to go in one direction, we still can't just uh, deprive the 49% of their rights, right?
Yeah.
So it can't be about utilitarianism.
Yeah.
It can't be just what's good for the most people, and it can't be, as Richie said in the dialogue we just read, whoever holds power gets to dictate
Yeah.
what's good,
I think
right?
there's a good, not a good one, but a reasonable argument for slavery using a utilitarian mindset that
Mm-hmm.
it's good for it's is good for the most people. Most people get
Paul,
pleasure. Go ahead.
when I was an
Uh,
atheist, I used to make the argument, if I just took a gun and shot you, Paul, I'm
yeah.
actually doing a good thing, because the policeman has to come and arrest me. I have to go on trial, and there's going to be, a judge and all the lawyers,
Mm,
and then I'm going to go to jail, and then there's all the people involved at the jail system, et cetera, et cetera. And
yeah.
so basically, I'm really, boosting up the economy. I'm
Yeah.
giving a lot of people jobs,
There you
all
go.
because what? I just killed one measly person, and now all these people can feed their families.
Yeah. So we have to understand what human nature is, and we have to We have to use our human reason in order to do this. Now, faith, of course, if you're a Catholic, faith certainly helps that because it underscores what human reason should and would already know if we were thinking clearly. Mr. Kent, any last word?
That was great. Let's do it again sometime.
Amen. That is a
Amen indeed.
summation of Chapter 2 with Kent Niebuhr. Of my book, Refuting the Nonsense and Reclaiming the Truth. It can be found on Amazon. A good book for people who are seeking the truth, for catechesis, for adult catechesis, for adolescent catechesis, or for anybody who just wants to understand what the world's arguments are and what human reason, how human reason would deal with that on a very reasonable basis. So, Kent Niebuhr, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for
And,
having me.
and thank you for being here and listening. We'll see you again on Beneath the Surface. God bless.